are we about to run out of data? All of the AIs that we have right now have basically been trained on everything they could scrape off the internet. And at the moment, a lot of the internet is basically shutting itself off, right? Reddit is saying, no, you can't crawl us anymore unless you pay us. And so the amount of data available to the bots to crawl might, in some estimates, get exhausted into this year, maybe next year. And if they run out of data to train them on, they're not going to be able to get any smarter.
What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and welcome to the third and final installment of my interview series with Carl from Internet of Bugs. In part one, we talked about how AI companies and big tech have a long history of faking the demos for their AI products. Then in part two, we talked about the Eliza effect and how human beings are naturally wired to believe our machines are smarter than they really are, and how AI startups might be preying on that vulnerability to push this AI hype cycle. And today we're talking about AI's big data problem and how that could lead to something called model collapse and a sudden end to the rapid development of artificial intelligence. And without further ado, here's Carl from Internet of Bugs. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the pace of AI development, because once again, the rockstar CEOs, they're all out there acting like we are about to enter the launch phase of this, where the AI is going to start improving itself and AGI is going to become a big thing in writing code. And, any day now, this explosion is going to happen. Is that really the case? Are you seeing this explosive development, or as changes in AI are made, are we starting to encounter where, well, if we fix this, we cause another problem somewhere else, and now we actually have legitimate engineering challenges here?
So predicting the future is always hard, right? So let me tell you kind of where we know we are. A few years ago, there was this famous in the geek community, the AI geek community, called Attention is All You Need. And basically what happened is a group of researchers took a whole bunch of data and this one particular algorithm that's not important right now called a transformer, and they threw a ton of data at this thing, and it behaved way better than anybody had any right to expect that it would behave. And everybody was just shocked at how well it went, right? And that's the thing, the large language model, the large part of large language model is from, we threw a ton of data at it, right?
And when did this paper come out, do you know, roughly?
I could look it up if you want, but we can put a note in the show notes. It was a few years ago.
I'll put the date down there.
And so because before that, this large language model was not what most of the people in the machine learning space were really spending their time on. And now pretty much everybody in the machine learning space is spending their time on that, because it turned out this thing was just, way more amazing than anybody expected. But what happened is everybody started, or not everybody, but a lot of people started companies that were trying to productize this and try to enhance it. And there was a belief for a while, and some people probably still believe this, that was the path to what they call AGI. And AGI, artificial general intelligence, it's kind of like if an AI can do anything that you could expect a remote worker to be able to do, with only as much input as a remote worker would need, that would be AGI, right? And if that happens, that's going to completely change the whole economy, right? And a lot of the bets that you're seeing and a lot of the stock prices that you're seeing are basically bets that that's actually going to happen. And if it does, there are going to be huge changes. The thing is, we're not seeing a trajectory that indicates that would keep happening. And what's worse, there's been some papers recently. Every year Stanford puts out an AI yearly, it's called the AI Index, I think. We can put a link to that too, but it's a yearly report on the state of AI. And in it, a few pages in, there's like a 4-page section on, are we about to run out of data? And there are several places that have done some research and said, well, all of the AIs that we have right now have basically been trained on everything they could scrape off the internet. And at the moment, a lot of the internet is basically shutting itself off, right? Reddit is saying, no, you can't crawl us anymore unless you pay us. And we're only going to get, and so different companies are, Facebook, they're all doing contracts with AI companies. And so you're not going to be able to crawl the entire internet anymore like you used to. And so the amount of data available to the bots to crawl might, in some estimates, get exhausted end of this year, maybe next year. And if they run out of data to train them on, they're not going to be able to get any smarter. You're still going to be able to put things around them, right, to let them interface with stuff. And there are a lot of business problems that they probably will be able to solve, but they're not going to be nearly as good as a remote worker, right? It's not going to be just as smart as a human, which is the thing that everybody's saying. If it can do that, right, then we're going to need universal basic income, and we're going to need all of this stuff, because basically most of the jobs are going to go away. But we're not seeing a trajectory that says that, but so much of the hype is pointing that direction. And so much of the stock price is justified by, if that happens, these companies are going to own the world, and I want a part of that. That at the point that they say, this is really as good as we're ever going to get, we can make some trade-offs, but we're not really going to be any faster. Whenever that happens, if it happens before actual AGI, then everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, all of this future taking over the world that we baked into your stock price, we're going to take that back now. Thanks.
That would not be pretty if and when that happens.
It's not going to be pretty.
Now, there's also growing concern that AI and the large language models, if they do run out of data, it's going to start feeding on its own output. And, like you mentioned with the code, and the code coming out full of bugs. Well, what happens if you take that, you feed it back into the code to train on that? It's going to, is that
right? So there's some
science fiction, or is that really a legitimate threat of AI getting dumber based on its own output?
It does. So there are some people that have been doing some research on this. They call it model collapse. So you can Google model collapse if you want more information on that. But basically what happens is, if you think about a curve, so like when you ask an AI, so if this is a curve of like all the things that people have done, right? And then you ask an AI to tell you about something, it tends to, it's probabilistic, right? So it tends to guess, it's an autocomplete. And so it guesses, what's the most likely word to come next, and what's the next word to come next, and what's the next sentence to come next, right? And it always goes from part of the center of that big distribution, right? So it always picks more likely words to go next, right? Well, what happens is, if you start training that AI on another AI, where that other AI is not using the full circle, the full breadth of everything that humans do, it only does the common stuff in the middle. And then the AI that's being trained says, okay, cool, I'm going to take what I got and I'm going to only do the middle of that. And then another AI comes along and trains on that and says, okay, I'm only going to do the middle of that. Then basically after a while, they're all just spitting out the same thing over and over and over again. And there's an actual real good picture in the paper where they start with a bunch of random garbage, and they train it on itself, and they train it on itself, and they train it on itself. And then you get to the point where it's like the same pattern just over and over and over and over and over again. So there's some people that are trying to figure out how to use synthetic data, how to make up data to be able to train AI with. And the best papers that I've seen, and there are some links to it on my channel, the best papers that I've seen say less than 50%, you can still kind of make process. And if you go much past that, then it starts really feeding on itself. So they might be able to make synthetic data up to maybe 40% of the data they already have. But in order for them to get to actual intelligence, they're going to need 10 times or 100 times as much data as they already have. And half again as much is just not going to cut it. It's possible that there's going to be some kind of breakthrough that completely changes the rules, but there's no evidence of that yet.
And they're also having a hard time coming across that data, right? The New York Times and a lot of the media outlets are suing OpenAI for scraping their intellectual property and then monetizing it and spitting it back out. So if anything, I think the data pool's probably out there getting smaller, which is why these deals with Reddit have been made. And, now we're getting things like glue your pizza together and eat rocks and jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. So, I think we're kind of seeing that in real time. And, I'm to the point now where when I go and I Google something, I don't trust the first few lines that it gives me, because it's that AI generated nonsense that 50-50 if it's good or not. So if these large language models are out there training on that, then that's already starting to happen then, right? That feedback loop of training on itself.
Well, so the problem is the thing that AI is being used the most for right now is stuff like generating web copy, right? And there are a ton of people. So all of those nasty SEO specific articles that you go to Google and it's like, oh, this is the list of the top 5, top 5 pieces of software to do X. And then you go and you read that and it's like, oh, it turns out that the top 1 piece of software to do X is actually the software that's written by the company whose site this is on, right? But they've, managed to trick Google into thinking that it was an actual review instead of just a puff piece press release kind of thing, right? Well, a lot of people are using AIs to create those kinds of websites, right? And to build marketing copy and that kind of thing. And those sites don't say necessarily that they're made with AI, because nobody wants to say that they made this whole site with AI that's all a whole bunch of, answering frequently asked questions on the internet so they can get the ad revenue. Well, the AIs, when they crawl the internet, will find that site, right? And they don't realize that everything in that site is an AI generated article. And we've found over and over and over again that the things that try to detect an AI generated article and are crap. And lots of kids get accused of plagiarism when they didn't actually plagiarize anything because their words sounded like AI. And so it's really hard for the companies that are scraping the web right now to know what their training data is coming from. And if it's coming from some other AI, or if it's coming from it, if it was created with a previous version of the AI I'm training right now. And so it's going to get harder and harder to know that your data is any good, which can lead to these models starting to feed on themselves without anybody realizing it.
It's the software equivalent of the snake eating its tail, it sounds like. I went back and I watched a lot of the content from your channel, and it really is excellent. It's very niche. It's, it's written from a software developer standpoint for software developers, but you're also, the psychological aspect of it, I found very thought provoking. And I thought your first video that you did, the one for your daughter's computer club, was just fantastic. And you told a story about Microsoft in that video. And I wish I could just play the whole clip, but share with us that Microsoft story, because I found that to be really eye-opening.
So I made that video in, March of this year. And what had happened, I went back like 7 months to about a year ago, July of 2023, when we found out that and it turned out it had happened before, but it turned out that the U.S. government, the Congress's email, so the U.S. representatives and senators, their email, which was hosted by Microsoft, had been read by hackers from either China or Russia, I forget, right? And then there was this big scandal, and there were Senate hearings and all this kind of stuff, and then there was a bunch of, Microsoft put out these, oh my God, you have to patch this right now. You have to patch this right now. And then it turned out, Microsoft's own internal emails were being read by some hackers that were trying to figure out what Microsoft's own executives knew about the hacking groups. And then there was a bunch of data that got left with a bunch of secret keys and stuff that got left on the internet unsecured by somebody who put it in the wrong group. And then the next thing that happened was there was a bunch of, this is right around the Super Bowl, there were a bunch of non-consensual deepfake porn pictures of Taylor Swift that went viral on Twitter or X or whatever the hell we're calling it now, that were just awful, right? And Twitter had to shut down a bunch of, like keywords and not let people search for things and that kind of stuff. And it was a big scandal. Well, it turned out that that Microsoft's image generator was the thing that had been used to generate all of those. And it turned out that there was a Microsoft researcher who in December, before the February that this happened, had said, hey, I found a way that this could happen. We need to shut this down. And Microsoft and the management was like, no, don't tell anybody about that.
Monetize at all costs. No, light speed, warp speed ahead. Don't slow down.
And so then Microsoft had to, make a bunch of changes and turn off a bunch of stuff on its image generator to keep this from happening anymore. And then the week after that, Microsoft crossed the $3 trillion market cap, past Apple, and became the most the highest market cap company in the entire world, which just really showed me. And this is the big problem that we have as software developers, is that there's no incentive for companies to do the right thing. Right. And this is how you get all these hacks, and you get people reading people's emails. This is how you get the Boeing 737 MAX, right, with a software problem that crashed 2 airplanes because of a software bug that was hidden by the company. But no one's gone to jail over that.
And so, they've been rewarded, right?
Right.
And the financial press and the media, they pay token lip service to these stories. But then when Sundar Pichai goes out and says, oh, it's the new fire, it's the new electricity, headlines, stock goes up. So, I mean, you're right. There is no incentive to be a decent company, and there's every incentive to lie and to cheat and to take risk, especially with other people's safety or other people's wealth. And we see that in Wall Street, just rampant in Wall Street, and there really is never any accountability.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this came from several years ago when they were making some changes to executive compensation, and they started compensating executives in RSUs and stock grants, right? And so it's like, okay, well, if I'm both getting incentive, if my bonuses is based on the stock price, and I'm getting paid in stock, because I'm getting a salary, but it's a fraction of my compensation. So I'm getting paid in stock, and I'm bonus based on the stock price. Well, the incentive for me to juice the stock price just went through the roof. And so it becomes a quarter after quarter thing. It's a nightmare.
And we saw how that, the RSUs, that's restricted stock units, basically shares in the company as compensation. That played a big role in that mutiny at OpenAI recently that we had back in December, where, the board of directors fired Sam Altman for whatever reason. Sam Altman, no shortage of reasons that they could have fired Sam Altman. All right. There's a lot out there on this guy. We don't need to get into all of that. But basically, Microsoft threatened to hire Sam Altman, and the whole company essentially sided with Altman. Well, they were financially incentivized to do so because all of their stock-based compensation that they had amassed, which was now a massive pile of wealth because of the valuation OpenAI was given by Microsoft, that would have all evaporated if Sam Altman had been fired. And then anybody who had issues with that, anybody who left the company, they had signed those non-disparagement agreements that basically said they forfeit all their stock-based compensation if they say anything bad about the company after they leave. And, Sam Altman comes out after the fact and says, oh, we never meant anything like that. He gets exposed for the draconian leadership style. And you can see it really takes on a pretty dark nature. And there's every incentive to lie, because when all of your wealth is tied up in this stock of the company, well, if you can go out and tell just one more lie, and then maybe the technology will catch up eventually anyway. Well, like we saw it with Theranos, right, with Elizabeth Holmes, who made all these promises about her one drop of blood machine, when it turned out the machine didn't work, and fake it till you make it was her mantra. And they were really sending out blood samples and having traditional tests done, very similar to what was going on with the Mechanical Turk and the humans double checking the AI. And the whole thing collapsed. And, look, she had generals and she had famous government officials on her board of directors. She was on Jim Cramer's show several times. She was a multi-billionaire. She fooled the whole world. She was viewed as this visionary, and she very carefully crafted her persona with the fake deep voice and the Steve Jobs turtleneck. And then I see Jensen Huang in his motorcycle jacket signing a girl's chest. And I just say, what stage of the collapse are we in here? There was a quote in that first video of yours that I really enjoyed. You said, the fundamental truth is it is awful to be a responsible, ethical human being working as a developer in a world where company executives are rewarded for dereliction with huge stock bonuses that are valued based on hype and not performance. And I think anybody working in any industry could probably identify with that phrase, because we've all seen that. I saw it in the energy industry. I saw it when I worked in wastewater. People who just, they hype it up. They make the promises that they never deliver on, and they cause untold havoc when they do that. And then there's the people who are really good, hardworking, decent people that are trying to clean up the mess. They got to come in and clean up after them. So I thought that was just a really well done video, a fantastic message, especially considering you had sent it to your daughter's computer club at college, kids who were questioning their future because of some of this hype that they've heard about AI. So I think that was really well done. And I think your channel is going places, Carl. I'm going to put a link down below, folks, to Carl's channel once again, and some of the videos and some of the papers that he referenced. I tell you, you're going to learn something with everything this guy puts out, because he is so diligent. Bibliographies, links to everything he references. You put a lot of work in. And I can tell you, as a fellow tuber, it's when you're done editing and you're done recording and thumbnailing, to go back and put in a bibliography is a frustrating consumption of time, and you are meticulous about it. So I commend you for that.
I'll give your viewers a quick hint. I'm actually working on a takedown video of a coding video for Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 3.5 video. Came out, I don't know, a week or two ago, and I'm working on taking it apart frame by frame. So that will be coming up before too long.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. When that comes out, I'll pin that in a comment down below. But until then, you're just going to have to keep an eye out on Carl's channel. And it's funny you should mention Anthropic, Carl, because every day I am bombarded with ads that say, Claude, buy shares, invest in Anthropic, right? They're really trying to get people to buy stock in Anthropic. And I am very much of the opinion that good investments sell themselves. Mm. And so when I see them spending all this money to advertise their product, I have to wonder what the angle is. So I'm really looking forward to that. Well, folks, once again, that is Carl from Internet of Bugs. It's a new channel. It's growing very fast, and I'm sure you can see now why. Carl, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And I'll give you the last word.
I really appreciate you digging into the machinations behind the accounting tricks and that kind of thing. I mean, I'm old. I live in Texas. I lived through Enron, and that kind of stuff is not okay. And if enough people look at stuff that's in their expertise and go, this is crap, this shouldn't be happening this way, and they go public with it, then maybe we can actually change some things after a while. It's going to be kind of bumpy, but it's a lot better than just going, well, it's business. Yeah. So I appreciate the work that you've been doing on this too.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words and your time. Once again, Carl from Internet of Bugs, links down below to his channel. And everybody, until next time, live small and dream big.